There are people who genuinely believe, and with substantial evidence, that we're living in a simulation. That's kind of crazy. But each person's individual reality is shaped by so many different things. Their experiences, their thoughts, their emotions. It's a lens through which you can view what actually is reality. And we only have something of an idea of what we perceive through that lens, but that lens still ultimately, at the end of the day, distorts what our perception of reality is.
Reality is anything we perceive it to be. Like whatever we feel, taste, touch, like think. I mean, everyone's reality is going to be different because we see different parts of life and we experience like one niche of life, each of us, and like that niche is our reality. What we see, how we change ourselves based on what we see, it's just like what we perceive. How you interpret reality, how you interpret what you see, is based on how you feel spiritually about the world. How the world came to be, how to go about the world, how you interact with your world, and why you interact with it that way. It could be you interact with it that way because you like this makes you feel better, blah, blah, blah. Or it could be you want to be on this path because of your spiritual beliefs or on this path. You interact with reality still, but it's just like it changes how you interact with it, the reasons why you do certain things, even though whether you do them or not.
I think it's our perception of what's going on in our day-to-day life. I think for many people, or spirituality in general, for many people that's kind of what grounds them to their reality, and that helps them interpret what they're perceiving from day to day, and it informs your belief system and everything.
I believe it's entirely subjective. Although we do have apparatus like eyes and our senses to interact with the world and give us information, the world and I guess our subjective is inherently intertwined. I think it's non-dualistic. It's really difficult to define reality because it's one and the same as how we interpret it. You see, a lot of people have different interpretations of God. For example, some people believe there's one true God. Some people believe from different religions there are many different gods. And some people believe that they take into account of this and say, oh, maybe we're under, it's all the same person, or maybe not even a person, maybe it's the world is just God. Equating God with reality, that's a really good question. I've never thought about this. From the way you believe, if you define God as your type of reality, and if it intertwines with you, you could define it that way. If we're under the assumption from premise 1 that there is a God, and the premise 2 is that, this God created everything, then it would naturally follow.
Reality is really anything that you want it to be, in my opinion.
Reality? I don't know, it's what you do every day. Like what you think, how you speak, how you act, what's important to you, what you value. Reality can be different for different people. Their experiences shape their realities, and what you experience probably determines what you hold valuable and what you interpret as real in your life. Reality is subjective. It's what you make of it and what you value and think and live. We're in the matrix. We gotta skip reality.
Integration of our senses, like the actual space we can feel, we can see, we can touch, and we can hear, we can smell. That's basically the integration of everything. And they kind of build into a complex sense of the actual world in our brain.
Reality is anything you can see in terms of whether that's reality as in like a realistic goal, so something that's able to be achieved and yet you know it, or reality as in, oh, that's the reality of like your situation, like that's the truth of what's going on. I don't really say that I'm spiritual, but some of my friends might say I am. But I think that in terms of like viewing the world, I think for me it's important to just be good and do as much good as possible, and because that's just how the walks of life should be. You should just be a good person. I don't think that reality has fine lines between, or fine connection between or with God and spirituality. I think God and spirituality are probably just a common core of beliefs or sets of beliefs that people use to confront reality. They're kind of like a tool. They complement your reality, but I don't think that they're necessarily against each other, but they do complement each other. They're different, they're very different.
Reality is what we can perceive and what is around us and is indisputably true.
Reality is living in the moment. Those that surround you and the space that you're in.
I think reality is anything you can perceive or feel. It varies by person. You know, like what is reality to you could be different from somebody else. You can describe something objectively, but somebody can perceive it differently than somebody else, which is why I say I think reality is different for everybody. Reality is based on what you perceive, like what your senses tell you, and then also what you know. What you know about a situation changes how you perceive it or how you view it. Like if there's a case or like a controversy, whenever something new comes to light, that kind of changes the reality of things, or like the way people say the reality of things. So I think it's just how you perceive things. I wouldn't call it something physical. I'd say part of it is physical, but I think a lot goes into it that also isn't physical, you know, like metaphysics type-ish. You know, people have faith, the existence of God is reality, like, I don't know, heaven, hell is reality, whereas somebody who doesn't have that faith or doesn't believe, that's not reality. Like, same with, I think, paranormal stuff, I guess. To some people, the supernatural is real, it's reality to them, like they believe in that stuff, whereas to other people, you know, it's just a bunch of nonsense.
I feel like reality is what we perceive things around us to be. So I feel like it could be reality that for one person that X is true, but for someone else it may not be that case necessarily. Someone could believe that X is true, but someone also could believe that Y is true and X is not true. So I feel like while some people may think reality is very objective for everyone, I feel like there are also times when reality can be subjective to each differing person. So I guess to be like more specific, I feel like reality is how we interpret and perceive the things around us. I'm like answering a question right now, you're like listening to me answer these questions. For me, my reality is this guy's asking me questions about some deep philosophical things, and your reality is that I am answering these questions that you ask me. So I feel like reality is what we as the beholder perceive around the world.
What is reality? Well, let's think about this for a second, right? We're here right now looking at this space, perceiving it, touching it, smelling it, but we don't really know what it is. We're just assuming that to my left there's a statue of someone. We're assuming that to my right there's a building, but we don't really know until we go and touch it or feel it. And then our brain transmits that information to us and says, this is your reality. But to every individual, the reality is different, right? To me, I'm getting interviewed right now by this guy in a straw hat, but to him, he's interviewing some random college student. So I think that reality is really based upon our own perspectives and the knowledge that we've obtained and how that applies to the world around us. So rather than the world telling us what is reality, we put impressions upon the world and say, this is my reality.
So I am an existentialist that believe that none of this is real. Life is an illusion. Mm-hmm. So the way I like to describe it is, this is a form of lucid dreaming. Do you know what a lucid dream is?
Kind of, yeah. Isn't it when like in your dream you can control what's going on?
So you're dreaming and you know that you're dreaming and you're able to wake up whenever you want. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, everything within that lucid dream that you're able to manifest is an illusion. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that is real is actually you, the dreamer. So as a result, I believe that all of this is an illusion, is an extension of a dreamer. The only thing that is real is a dreamer, and this is all a manifestation of a dreamer's consciousness, including what you see here.
Okay.
But that dreamer is also me, but not me as Uche, but like a higher version of myself. Mm. And the dreamer is also you, and the bacteria, the oxygen molecules, everything that permeates the universe and beyond, because all of that is one consciousness. What would you say about that?
So are you saying like, you and I together are developing this reality like together, or is it more so I'm developing my own reality and you're developing your own?
So yeah, there's one way to look at it as reality being subjective, what you create of it. Of course, we don't have technology to differentiate what you feel versus how I feel to compare and contrast. But in my definition of reality, we are supposedly experiencing reality as one. But within that lucid dream, right? If you are able to tap into the dreamer's consciousness, you are one with the dreamer, and as a result, you are also able to manipulate the dream, just like the dreamer is able to manipulate the dream. So you and the dreamer are one, and this is basically what Jesus came to show the way. And Jesus was able to tap into the dreamer's consciousness, hence why he called himself God. I and my Father are one, and because he was able to tap into that dreamer's consciousness, he's able to manipulate it as he could. Hence why we perceive it as miracle. But most people are not able to do that because we have quote unquote fallen from grace. So as a result, people see themselves, I call it separation of identity. So they see themselves as others as opposed to one. And as a result, they're sort of like in that dream, but they're kind of lost within that dream.
Right.
And they're not tapped into that dreamer's consciousness. And they believe that that's all there is, as opposed to tapping into the dreamer's consciousness and being able to maximize the dream that they're in.
Wow, that's a lot. It reminds me of Inception.
Inception, yeah, exactly. Okay, so you're saying that objectively we are at Rice University right now.
Yeah.
How do I know that that is not a perception of me?
It's like not illusion or something like that.
But how do I know that that is not a perception of what I perceive that you're saying? But in reality, though, like in the actual reality, objective reality, you're actually perceiving something totally different. And maybe there's some type of conversion system that makes me understand it as though we are saying the exact same thing. But if I'm able to teleport my mind into your mind, you perceive something
like
totally
what's
different.
Actually here is completely different.
What's actually here?
Yeah.
How do I know that this is not a manifestation of my own
okay, so like you're kind of saying like, what if I actually perceive, like, for me, like, it's not like I'm in Rice at all. I'm just in a completely different area. And I'm just saying that I'm at Rice because in your mind, what you see through your eyes over here, it's just Rice University.
I perceive you saying that you are at Rice University, but that's all as a production of my own mind.
I
but
see.
if I'm able to separate my mind and go into your reality,
you see that what I see is completely
something
different.
Totally different.
I see.
And it could even be your reality, something beyond my own comprehension. It would be so alien to me. How do I know that?
Dang, bro, I'm not sure about that actually. I can't even lie.
So what if what we perceive as reality is none of this is actually real, and the only thing that is real is actually my mind, which is projecting all of this and creating the illusion that this is actually real. When in reality, as in real reality, you're actually not here, and the only thing there is, has ever been, and will ever be, will be my mind.
As in like the Matrix type thing?
Something like that. But
No,
then, which will allude to the fact that you're not real, you're not really happening. This interview is not happening right now.
True, but then also you'd have to assume that my reality is also in my head as well. I mean, I remember reading this book called Unveiled Mysteries, and from the guy's perspective, like all this happened in the physical, where he was transported between different timelines, like all these different things, but it all happened in his mind space, right? So he couldn't distinguish between these different realities. But as he was going through this journey, everything seemed real. And at the end of it, he didn't know what reality was besides just what was in his head. So kind of going on your point, this may not be my reality. I could be some figure living in your head. I wouldn't know it because I'm just a figment of your imagination. And that goes for anything. And there are many philosophies where people say, oh, you can influence the universe, you are the universe. And I truly believe that. I've seen many examples where, you know, like the idea of manifestation, right? Where you put a thought out there, you act upon it, and it becomes true. How could that be true if the universe wasn't just up here, you know?
So basically you're agreeing with me that the only thing that is the mind, and the mind is projecting the universe.
I do believe that the mind has greater influence on the universe than people first thought. And until we're able to fully describe and examine that influence in the world, we won't actually know what a reality is.
Do you believe it is possible that the mind can project something totally different from this reality that we think we perceive, like a totally different universe with a totally different set of physiological rules?
Yes, and only because research has been done into like what LSD and psychedelic mushrooms can do to the mind. People have had very vivid experiences. They've gone months in a different life, living with a different family, going through this entire history with these people that don't exist. But to that person, that was their reality. So in that example, the mind was projecting into a different reality. It was making a different universe. But it didn't exist according to what we know as real, right? So I do think that the mind does project what we want to perceive out into this world, and that we have greater influence on the outer world than it does have on us in some way.
So if that's the case, that it is possible for people to experience reality subjectively, how are we able to tell what is quote unquote normal?
Normalcy is determined by what is like the general consensus, I guess. By agreeing upon certain facts of life, on things that we've had shared experiences on. Like for example, it rains, right? We all know it rains, so we just assume that rain comes from the sky, it's water. But there's no other real way to prove that unless we all just agree that it's rain. I was actually in a philosophy class, and there is the idea of introspection, right? And introspection, someone tells you something that they thought or they observed in their mind, and you just take it as true because you have no way of objectively measuring that. It's all subjective up here. And even in this objective plane around us, if I were colorblind, I could say, oh, the light shining in my face is blue, but you had no other way to prove that it was blue unless you could see through my eyes, right?
That's fair. Anything else last before I cut it off?
I think this is a really interesting question.
Thank you so much, man.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.